Hello, and welcome to episode 2 of The Future is Spoken, produced by the Digital Assistant Academy. This show accompanies the Digital Assistant Academy's course entitled Voice Interaction Design. If you register for the Voice Interaction Design course by October 16th, 2020, you will be eligible for a 15% discount on course fees. Enter the code DALAUNCH for your discount. That's DALAUNCH. We'll include these details in the show notes. In today's episode, Rebecca Evanhoe, a conversation designer and strategist, discusses pathways into voice interaction design, also called conversation design. Rebecca's own journey into conversation design is a fascinating story. It starts with a chemistry degree and then a Master of Fine Arts in fiction writing. Rebecca also shares many insights into entering voice interaction design and talks about the qualities needed to succeed in this field. She's interviewed by host Sheila Cagill. Enjoy the episode.
Hi, Rebecca. Welcome to The Future is Spoken.
Hey, thanks for having me.
It's our pleasure. It's great that you can connect and share with us pathways into voice interaction design. And before we jump into that topic, tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, where you've studied, and about your work as well.
Absolutely. You'll see as I describe my background how diverse a conversation designer's background can be. So I grew up in Kansas and I have an undergraduate degree in chemistry from the University of Kansas.
Wow.
And then I spent a few years out of school just kind of working, as a waitress and at a grocery store. And then I went on to get an MFA in fiction writing from the University of Florida.
Holy smokes, wow. So
yeah.
I know I'm digressing a bit, would you describe yourself as a polymath?
I would definitely describe myself as a person who's curious about everything. I think a lot of people who get into conversation design are really drawn to the right brain, left brain combination that the work requires. And so I think in my background, you can kind of see that reflected with science and writing degrees. And I definitely in college took classes in philosophy, and I actually have most of a journalism degree as well. So, just maybe actually polymath would be a good term.
And that is fascinating. And so it sounds as though, as you just mentioned, curiosity is one of the keys to becoming a successful voice interaction designer.
Absolutely. Curiosity, being really interested in teaching yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And an example of that is, I don't have a linguistics background. I never studied it, but it's really important to understand how people talk to each other. So that's something that I sort of studied on my own.
Right. And let's go back to your story. So after a while, you went and did an MA in creative fiction writing.
Mm-hmm.
And was that also in Kansas, or did you move to do that?
Yeah, I went to Gainesville, Florida, and got my degree at the University of Florida. While I was in Gainesville, I had a very fateful plane ride. I sat next to a person who was founding a startup in Gainesville on a plane. And it was a healthcare startup, and they were making a conversational kind of training interaction that taught nursing students how to interview patients well. Mm-hmm. And so it was kind of a chat bot on the back end, but students interacted with it like a mock interview with the patient. And they needed a writer for the work. And so I was supposed to work for them for 2 weeks, kind of sprucing up some of the dialogue, and ended up working for them for 5 years. It was a really great experience. And that's how I learned to be a conversation designer, because the role really expanded from looking at dialogue to looking at training data, looking at the information architecture of the experience, looking at student transcripts, like actual interactions with the bot, and getting my chops in user research and user testing. So it really was a 5-year crash course in conversation design.
Wow. And as you mentioned right at the start of that little story, what a fateful plane ride. So if you hadn't met this person on the plane, your life would have taken a different direction.
Absolutely. I really don't know what I would be doing. And the interesting thing about conversation design is that the term conversation design is pretty new. People have been designing for voice, since, the 80s. But when I kind of got into it, it was something I had never heard of. It was a job that seemed like it just existed in this one company.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's since, there are conversation designers all over the place, but it was really very novel to me and kind of to the world at the time.
So did you continue with the creative fiction program, or were you suddenly diverting to this new and exciting field that you'd had from this fateful encounter?
I did finish my degree. It was a 3-year degree, and I was sort of working on the side for the startup. So it was a busy time, but I was really excited about my fiction writing work, and also excited that I was using creativity and also my analytical side in my job.
Wow.
And then I don't write fiction much anymore, but it always is like there in my mind. It's always something I want to return to.
And I'm going to ask this question because I've got a feeling that work on your creative writing degree, it must have really assisted with your work in conversation design. Is that true?
Absolutely. I think that when people write, a lot of people view it outside of the group of writers who are doing the writing. A lot of people view it as just this like creative process, and your thoughts are flowing and you're expressing yourself, which is part of it. But the actual writing process is actually making a bunch of tiny decisions to make sure that what's on the page matches your intention and what you want the reader to take from it. And in fiction writing, we also workshop. So that's a form of user testing. We sit down, our peers read our work, they give us feedback about what worked, what wasn't working. And that's how we start to learn that like what's on the page, you learn how to be objective about how well what's on the page is working. And so that skill carries right over into what we do in conversation design, which is trying to maximize the chances that our user is going to understand what's said to them and be able to respond intuitively.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. It's so funny, isn't it, to use the word user testing for writing and even poetry workshops. I would never have made that connection. And your point about those kind of micro decisions that writers make, and when they've been writing for a long time, it kind of happens intuitively. You're almost unaware of it.
Yeah, you really get into a flow. But I do think that that is the analytical component. Even if you write creatively, you are still using an analytical part of your brain at the same time.
And so for conversation design, you have to develop an awareness of that analytical flow.
Yeah, absolutely. And when different fiction writers will tell you different things, but I do think many of us keep the concept of a reader, a user, if you want to keep using that metaphor or that connection.
Yeah.
A lot of times they keep the reader in mind. Some fiction writers even imagine a specific reader that they're trying to communicate to. So I think that mindset absolutely goes into, when you're writing prompts for a conversation, you're thinking about serving this other person or working on their terms and understanding about them.
And we're kind of, at the same time, we're having this conversation and we're traveling along your career journey. So you're in Florida, you completed your degree and you were doing a crash course in voice conversation. What happened next?
Well, Alexa happened next. So Alexa became a public product, I believe, was it 2014? I want to say Alexa, it's 2020 now. So I want to say Alexa is 6 years old.
That sounds about right to me. Yeah, I think I read that recently. Yeah.
Yeah. And so all these tech companies suddenly realized that they could build the so-called third-party skills for Alexa. Google Home was, shortly hit the market after that. And it became such a need to start developing a company's voice presence, their voice interface, and also chatbots kind of had a big upswing in customer service applications. So I realized that I sort of accidentally acquired this very high demand set of skills. And I started doing a little freelance for a different tech company. And from there kind of segued into working full-time for a digital agency as their first conversation designer.
So that sounds fascinating, Rebecca. You got your first job with an agency as a conversation designer. Now, what kind of projects did you work on?
The great thing about working for an agency, especially early on in your career, is getting exposed to a bunch of different projects. So probably every 2 months I was with a different client. So I worked on Alexa skills, we worked on chatbots, we worked on some like custom, like a conference room that you talk to operate it, working on projects like that. We worked on kiosks at conferences that sort of had an avatar that you could ask for information or directions. So it really expanded. I developed the skills in my first 5 years, and then working for the agency, I got to apply those skills in all these different use cases, technology stacks. So it again was another incredible learning experience to be able to work with so many different clients, different verticals, banking, hospitality, lots of insurance companies. So I kind of saw the full gamut of conversational interfaces.
Yeah, that does sound fascinating. So as you just said, you got, massive exposure to so many sectors of the economy, which would benefit anyone going forward in that field. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I'm curious to know, and I think a lot of viewers and listeners will be curious as well. What were the challenges, the things that you found quite difficult, and then what things kind of really delighted you or brought the greatest reward in this work?
Great questions. I think the challenges working with clients are first education. A lot of them think that the tech was further along than it was, because the industry and the salespeople in the industry often send the message that that the future is now, and actually a lot of the tech is still probably not as robust as we would imagine it to be. So educating clients on what's achievable today and how we get to the future was a big piece. Another piece was clients often expected these things to be very fast, particularly for voice interactions, because to their mind, you're not like, they would think that you didn't have to build very much because there's not an interface that you can see. And it just creates kind of like a natural misconception that you just need a little bit of code and then you can talk to something, which isn't the case at all. We're actually like, there's a lot of design and code that go into trying to replicate the human brain and its ability to talk to you.
Yeah.
So those were the two big talking points with every client that we were always kind of working with. In terms of the good parts, I met so many cool people. Like often I just stayed in touch with clients, the teams that I worked with on client side, because it was like seeing the best people in the tech industry. And then I also would say that like my relationships with my coworkers, also a huge part of that, just working alongside smart people who are good communicators, who were very creative, was exciting. And I'm talking specifically about the developers that I worked with. A lot of people think that developers aren't creative people, but that's not true at all. And there's also the misconception that developers have poor communication skills. That's also not true. So
Mm.
the team collaboration on any project was usually the highlight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would imagine, I mean, the first challenge that you talked about, educating clients, that still tends to exist. So I would think that students from the Digital Assistant Academy will have to, take that on board. And I think there's so many fields, like even financial, architecture, engineering, there's an education of the client component, isn't there? What's possible and what's not possible. Yeah.
Always. That's true. Also, when you're not working with clients, when you work for Amazon, you work for Google, communicating with internal stakeholders is also huge. There's a great book called Articulating Design Decisions.
Mm-hmm.
That's really useful in kind of going through what are the best ways to communicate about your design work to get the kind of feedback that you need at a certain stage. And that's a huge part of design, is doing it and then explaining it and accepting feedback about it from lots of different people.
That sounds like a good read. We'll make sure we include that in the show notes. Thanks for mentioning that. And the benefits, I mean, the networking, as you said, the people that you would meet who are on the kind of cutting edge of the beginning of a whole new sector in technology and creativity must have been really personally rewarding for you, as well as from a work point of view.
Absolutely. And, basically I love teaching. When I was a graduate student, I taught. I teach now at Pratt. And that client education piece, that teaching component, was also kind of an extension of that part of work that I like to do.
And you were at the agency for how long, Rebecca?
I was with the company was called Mobiquity. I was there for 2 years, and I got sort of poached away by Amazon Web Services, which is the tech side of Amazon. They had a team. They were forming a new conversational AI team, and they needed a conversation designer. So I went over and was, I think, their first or second conversation designer. Working in a similar capacity, we worked with clients who came to AWS looking for expertise in building conversational interfaces with AWS technologies. And I was there for about 18 months. Again, had the most fantastic team. But I left earlier this year just to work for myself and also work on some personal projects like writing a book.
And can we ask what the book is?
Yeah, the book is, it's called Conversations with Things. I'm co-authoring it with my friend Diana Dybel, who's also a conversation designer, and her background is in playwriting. So she's definitely a kindred spirit. And we're writing this book about user experience design and how it looks when you're designing for conversational interfaces.
How exciting.
Yeah, it'll be published next year. Or 2021, I should say. And it's coming out with Rosenfeld Media, who, I love Rosenfeld books. So we're so proud to have our book published by them.
Good for you. Oh, congratulations.
Thanks.
Do you have a website for which viewers and listeners could follow the progress of your book if they want to kind of see when they can buy it?
Yeah, I think the easiest way to find the book, if you Google Rosenfeld Media Conversations with Things, you should find it. The URL's a little long. And then you can also find me and Diana on Twitter as well. Okay,
well, we'll include that link in the show notes as well.
Great.
And something that you're doing, I'm not sure if yes, it is freelance. You're an advocate for an organization called Women in Voice. What is that?
Women in Voice is an amazing organization founded by Joan Palmater Bajorak. The organization just turned 2. It has chapters all over the world, and it was founded just to support women who are interested in getting into conversation design or developing for conversational interfaces, just anyone who's interested in this technology. We wanted to make a space that was supportive of women and kind of get an early presence so that this industry wouldn't be so male dominated.
Yeah, and I'm starting to feel like a little bit breathless now, because you've accomplished more in your career than most people do in, say, 20 years. So we've arrived at the present moment. You're a visiting assistant professor with Pratt, based in New York. What is Pratt? Does it stand for something as well? And can you tell us about your role there?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think it stands for something. It's just called Pratt Institute. It's a design school in the New York area. And when we say design, we're talking architecture, fashion design, art. And they have an undergraduate, many undergraduate programs. And they also have a graduate school. I teach there's the School of Information, and then there's a specific degree program called Information Experience Design, which is essentially user experience design with kind of an emphasis on the information part of it. And I teach a course in conversation design, which, my students are incredibly dedicated, super curious. They ask amazing questions. So it's really great to be in a classroom environment with other smart people. And we talk a lot about how to be conversation designers, but also ethics. How can we be advocates for inclusivity in our work? And it's really exciting to help people gain those skills and then see them go off into the workforce as strong advocates.
Wow, that does sound great. What a fantastic opportunity. Now, since I've been working with Shamla, which isn't very long really, on the podcast and the creative and marketing side of the work for her, I've been really taken with the big role that creativity is playing in the work that's done by the voice conversation design process. And because I made an assumption before I began working with her that it would be very much technology and coding, and how wrong that is. So the paths into voice interaction design, let's talk about that and this incorrect assumption that, you have to be very strong technically and not necessarily, strong creative thinker.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll give a general comment and then I'll talk about paths into it.
Okay.
My general comment is, I think a lot of people think more about it as a technology problem. Like, we advance this field through technology. But if you look at what it's literally trying to do, it's trying to imitate human behavior. It's trying to replicate parts of what the human mind can do. And that necessitates us to actually really study what the human brain does and what humans do with each other. So, that's like literally what the humanities are about. So it's just such a natural fit for, I just think the industry is seeing the importance of humanities in a new way.
Mm-hmm.
And that leads us
sorry to interrupt, but that's kind of very nice, isn't it, for those of us who did study writing and philosophy, and everyone whose parents said, what are you going to do with an English literature degree? What a waste of time. And suddenly there's this new opportunity.
Absolutely. Or what do you do as a linguist? Linguists are just very high demand right now in a way that they weren't previously, perhaps. So the pathways in, as I'm sort of circling around, are lots of people come from writing, whether it's fiction, poetry, screenwriting. I know people who are actors who work who got work in this space. A lot of people who are maybe copywriters or technical writers find their way in. You see people who are linguists, people who study sociology, human behavior. All these folks can find a way into the field. In the early days, no one was really getting a degree in it. No degree existed, right? And now there are schools like Pratt. I know University of Washington has programs. Parsons, another design school in New York, has conversational tracks. So we are starting to see people who are going to school specifically to learn about UX, and conversational interfaces are a component of that. But I do think there's still such a strong need for humanities folks to be on these teams.
Sorry. And of course, that's what the Voice Interaction Design Academy is going to provide, that kind of standardized approach to what is needed from the technological, the creative, and even the privacy side of things.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So you can take a background where you have expertise in something related, go through a program like this one, and end up with the skills and the mindsets to get a job. And I also talk a little bit about how specifically to get that job, because there's a bit of a chicken and egg thing you see where people need job experience to get the job, right? And doing a project on your own, making your own portfolio pieces, I think is really important. So if there's like a passion project, there are many ways to make a prototype or even a production level conversational interface, whether it's an Alexa skill or a chatbot with no or very little code. So making your own portfolio is important. And then also finding those startups who might be willing to take a chance on someone who has some of the skills and a strong motivation to do work and increase those skills. That can also be a really good pathway in. Finding a startup who wants, 10 hours a week from you, or maybe you work with them for a month. That can also be a way to get the experience that you need to get a full-time job.
And that's important as well, isn't it? Focusing on the ability to find work and giving, in particular, young people support and guidance on, what their resume should look like, as you just touched on, what their portfolio should look like, taking the first steps into, the world of work if they've never done that. It's quite different from studying.
It really is. It really is. Get your portfolio, your resume, getting that first interview, knowing how that interview is going to go. All of that is intimidating. Of course, like now where I'm at, once you interview at like a big company like an Amazon or a Google, it's like 5 interviews in a row for an hour each. It's like a whole day. Your brain is fried by the end of it. Once you get through that, you're not intimidated by interviewing ever again.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, that's kind of like trial by fire, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I remember thinking that when I interviewed at Amazon, I remember thinking that it went well, and that even if I didn't get the job, I was just proud of getting through that day,
Yeah. And you're kind of thankful for the experience because, next time you're going to be prepared. It was very tough. And, it's like, bring on the next interview. I'm ready.
Exactly.
Yeah. Now let's go back a little bit to paths into voice interaction design. I certainly didn't mean to imply by my comment earlier that, creativity is the key into a successful career, because of course it's not. One can come from a more tech background. So if one has studied, for example, coding, or has been involved in some other technological background, and they've listened to this podcast episode so far, or they're watching on our YouTube channel and they think, I hate writing, I don't like reading, I can't do this, how sad, I thought I could, but there's another opportunity gone. What do you say to those people?
Yeah, I mean, conversational interfaces do require teams almost all the time. So, and not, no person can be a developer and a linguist and a writer and have a background in user research, so you bring in people with different skill sets. Specifically, I would say that I think about design, this goes back to my chemistry degree brain. When we're designing things, we're actually making a hypothesis and testing it. And the whole team is doing that. So I think buying into that mindset helps you realize that everybody's coming in with their own expertise, and we're all going to work together to align on what we think our best hypothesis is for how this design should go, how this conversation should go. And then we're going to test it and validate whether we were right or not. So if we weren't right, whether like there was an issue with the code, there was an issue with the writing or the personality we tried to convey, we get to go back and change it based on that feedback. So I think that mindset kind of helps. I think there's two things there. One is the testing mindset kind of relieves the burden of having to be the absolute final word. It's a learning process every time. And then the other part is I'm kind of emphasizing that you need teams, even if it's a small team, because no person has this full comprehensive skill set.
Okay, that's good to know. So, I mean, science and technology is certainly all about testing, aren't they? So that will be a strength that they would bring. And we've used, or each of us in this conversation, we've probably used the word curiosity at least half a dozen times. And I'm curious about the curiosity element, because curiosity is a great thing, but it can sometimes take you down rabbit holes. So talk a little bit about the curiosity that's needed and when you might need to rein it in.
That's such a good question. You can see if you're a curious person, you end up with like bookshelves like these, right? And you're absolutely right that this is a field where you can really go down some rabbit holes. I mean, I've started reading about linguistics more, and that kind of naturally lends itself to like philosophy, epistemology, theory of mind. So like definitely possible to have rabbit holes. The curiosity that you need is, I think, curiosity about your users. You need curiosity about, I think, your teammates and their ideas. And I think you need curiosity about being wrong, right? Like you're going to be wrong. You're going to think something's going to work really well that doesn't. So I think letting yourself just be curious in your testing rather than feeling like it's going to expose you as being right or wrong, that's also a really useful mindset around curiosity. And I do think a lot of people in this field tend to be autodidacts, self-taught, and the curiosity to keep up with the field, to learn about different technology, to learn about different approaches, that will also serve you really well because the field is rapidly changing.
Wow, that's really interesting. Yeah, and you have put some parameters on the curiosity there, and importantly, you've touched on other traits that I would think could be learned, but kind of keep the ego in check. You do have to be open to being wrong. That's so important in science, or even when you're working in a workshop as a writer. You've got to, it's not life or death, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't reflect badly on you. And also the team player element is absolutely crucial. If you're someone who wants to work on your own, you have trouble connecting with others, or for some reason you just want to be an introvert and do your own thing, it's not really going to work, is it, this kind of career for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there is room for, I'm an outgoing person, but pretty introverted, like needing time by myself to like restore and gather my thoughts. And I also am a person who like, I need time by myself to think through a problem before I engage in like group problem solving. So I think what's really important is knowing how you work. If you're a person like me and you need processing time before you have an answer, kind of making sure that people around you know that, and just saying like, hey, before this meeting, can you give me a little bit of info? Because I want to think about what I'm doing. I think those little things can go a long way. I also think that, there are probably a lot of introverts in the tech industry, and there's also a lot of like neurodivergent people in the tech industry. And I like to think that it's a space where people work really hard to just understand, how do we work together well? There's lots of different ways that can go. And I would like to see people trying to make more space for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I probably shouldn't have used the word introvert. And in using it, I meant it in a relative sense. Like, I'm an introvert too, but I know I need exposure to ideas, other people. I love interesting conversations like the one that we're having. And just as you said, if it's something quite heavy or even not heavy, I might want time to think about it. And I think that's totally understandable. So instead of introvert, we should probably say, if you really don't like working with people, full stop. It's not about the introvert extrovert thing, is it? Yeah.
You're right. Yeah. That I think there's this sort of older idea of, a computer programmer is a genius and they go into their room and the code comes out. That tends to just not really work well for the way that teams are these days. And especially with conversational interfaces, the collaboration is really tight. So like working very closely with a developer is how experiences work best. If you're doing like something visual, like an app, it's possible to make wireframes and hand those over and have things be a little bit more disconnected. But as a conversation designer, I'm helping with curating the training data and making sure that's supporting the user experience. I'm helping with maybe understanding or giving feedback on how the algorithm could even be adjusted, not the specifics, but the general behaviors, how that can be adjusted based on feedback or based on something we're trying to accomplish. So having a direct line of communication is really important. And you're right, if you like straight out don't like people, then you're going to struggle a little bit. But I also think people who get into conversational tech like people. This tech is all about people.
Yeah. And I think the other thing that's kind of just struck me was that it's also the pathway could also be open to a demographic that faces discrimination, and that's older people. And as the economy has suffered during the pandemic, and we've seen companies lay off so many people of any age, the issue here, of course, is that if you're older, and I mean, even 40 plus in the workforce is considered old, which I think is tragic and wrong. But the chances are that you've read a lot more and you've got way more world experience. And if you have those personality traits that we talked about, you're going to be a good fit for this career.
Yeah, absolutely. There is a lot of ageism in tech. It really favors younger people. And we see it in conversational interface design too. I mean, when we think of like a tech company founder, a lot of times you think of like some guy in his 30s, which isn't true. There's lots of founders of all, there's diverse founders out there for sure. But I mean, there's a lot of promise in the conversational interface field. Most of the people in it are really big-hearted, really open, and very interested in solving some of these problems. So there's a lot of conversation about racism, ageism, sexism in this field. And I think in part because it reflects people. So like our biases are showing up and it's really apparent and well established that these things can happen. So I think there's a great opportunity for this field to be pretty progressive.
That's great.
Yeah,
that's inspiring as well as promising. And before we wrap up, it's been such a fascinating conversation. I'm sure we could chat about this for hours. Are there any other key pointers that you'd like to leave people with in terms of considering going into conversation design or interaction design, and what would they be?
I think my main point is just to say, like, welcome to conversational interface landscape. You're here. There's a great community. There's all kinds of ways to get involved. There's Women in Voice. There's tons of people on Twitter who are talking, communicating with each other, supporting each other. There's a group called Voice Tech Global who is doing great work. There's Slack channels, there's all these amazing resources, and you can just kind of hop in. It's a very welcoming community. So there's lots of ways to network, and there's lots of ways to learn from other people around you.
That's great. Very encouraging words there. I'm sure people who are thinking about this as a career change will be really impressed and thrilled to hear that. Thank you so much. Yeah. Thank you so much, Rebecca. I've really enjoyed speaking with you, and I've learned so much.
Thank you. This was great. I really enjoyed it too.
Yeah. Thanks for joining this episode of The Future is Spoken. And I'm sure we'll connect again, Rebecca, in the future when we have to revisit pathways or anything related to linguistics or career choices, things like that. Take care of yourself.
Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening today. Remember, you can find all the information on how to become a certified voice interaction designer, along with show notes and more, at our website, digitalassistant.academy. That's digitalassistant.academy. Pre-register before the Academy's launch in October for a 15% discount by entering the discount code DALAUNCH. That's a 15% discount with the code DALAUNCH. In our next episode, we'll be exploring conversational interfaces and how to ensure they are successful with guest and voice tech specialist Carrie Roberts.